Hello and welcome to 11FS Spotlight. My name is David Brear, and in this weekly show we shine a bit of a spotlight on the best and the brightest in the tech and financial services industry to try and understand what gets them going, growing, and where they really think the future of the industry is going to be. On today's Spotlight, I'm delighted to be joined by Selina Flavius, who is founder at Black Girl Finance. How are you doing today, Selina?
I'm really well, David. Thanks so much for having me.
No worries. It's been a busy couple of weeks, isn't it? We'll get into that in a foreshadowing. We'll get into that in a second in terms of all the things that have been going on. But what we're going to be doing is talking about Selina's career and how to make financial services inclusivity and literacy a priority for everybody as well. Maybe if we start off, Selina, a little bit about the elevator pitch for Black Girl Finance. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah. Absolutely. So Black Girl Finance has been around for the past 3 years. It was founded in 2019. It's a financial coaching company, and originally it was set up to provide a safe space for people from kind of Black, Asian, minority ethnic backgrounds, women, to talk about all things money. So I started it, like I said, back in 2019. It started off as a website where I would recommend money podcasts to listen to, books to read, social media accounts to follow. So it was all about just providing information, that kind of financial education piece that's often missing. And then really quickly, or well, not really quickly, over the past 3 years, it's evolved into I provide financial coaching. I also have written a book. There's the Black Girl Finance podcast. There's also the Black Girl Finance event as well. So we're doing a lot of things, and it's all about making money conversations very, very inclusive. That's the goal.
Well, as you say, I mean, on the educational side of things, there's not many things out there that are, people talk about, just having an account or being part of something. That's not really where it's sort of where it begins, but not really where it ends, isn't it? And, education around that and the community that sort of drives around that is super important. So, and it's great, as you say, the momentum that you've built up over 3 years with the successes that you've had on different things has been fantastic. But, and to top that, I guess, first off, I guess starting a little bit with a congratulations. You won at the British Bank Awards. You won Online Financial Influencer of the Year, which is, that's a hell of a title to have, but it's sort of surmounting almost all of the things that you've achieved over that period, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So when I found out I was nominated, I was like, okay, what is going on? And because it's a British Bank Award, I'm not a bank. My background, and I'm sure we'll get into it, is not in kind of traditional it's not in financial services at all. So to win the award, to be nominated was like, okay, great. And I kind of messaged everyone to get them to vote for me, everyone that I know. And then just to find out that, loads of other people have voted, and the reasons why they voted as well, just all about, I guess, feeling seen for the first time. So people from my background, having the opportunity to have their experiences shared. And I guess I did that with the Black Girl Finance book as a person who consumes lots of personal finance literature. So prior to launching the platform, I'd read so many personal finance books, and none of them were written by Black women until this year, until this year. So there was my book that came out in January, and also a book by Bola Sol. And I guess for people seeing the representation, and my book talks a lot about culture, the cultural influences of money, because it's very nuanced. We're not all one size shaped customer. We don't fit into that little box when we are kind of using financial services. So I think for the voters, I feel like they felt seen. That inclusivity piece is really important.
Yeah, definitely. And it's it's a proud moment as well, right? I think with the British Bank Awards, 11FS were lucky enough to win one as well. And I sort of said to my mum, it's like it's the logo that like the big banks use on their TV adverts, so it must mean something, So, but that's great. Congratulations on that again. Do you want to sort of unpack a little bit more on your background then? Because I think there's something people who have been in financial services for a really long time all talk in a certain way, which actually doesn't lend itself to really talking to non-financial services people in terms of actually being able to convey themes so give us a bit of your background and we can sort of almost figure out where that came from, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So I should say I've always been interested in money, finances. I talk about in my book the fact that when I was 16, finished doing GCSEs, considered doing an economics A level or economics at A level. But for me, just when I was growing up, there was no frame of reference. So my parents are from the Caribbean. They both moved here as teenagers, and they both had to kind of navigate their financial lives themselves. They didn't it's slightly different to people who maybe have been born here and their parents have been here for generations. You have that generational wealth that you might have and those lessons that come with that, whereas my parents, they had to start from scratch, which it just meant that I wasn't, there was no role models when it came to finances. And then also when it came to thinking about a finance career, there was no immediate role models for me. So I went off and studied biology and chemistry and I think psychology. I was trying to remember before this conversation, but it's such a long time ago. I forget.
Different life,
But
a different lifetime ago.
yeah, absolutely. But I went off and studied sciences, and then I went into a career in sales, basically. So sales and marketing. First for a large kind of American corporate company that had been around for, at that point, like 90
Wow.
years. So real kind of corporate company. And then after that, I moved to essentially was a tech startup company. So that was where my interest in like software and tech came into it. So, but at the same time, there was always that interest in personal finance and money. I also went through my own personal struggles when it came to finances and money. And I remember saying to one of my colleagues at the corporate company that I worked in, saying to him, I'd really like to create a platform to help women when it comes to their money and finances. I didn't know what it was or what it would be or what it would look like. And it was a number of years before I created Black Girl Finance. But I think working in the software company and kind of understanding a bit more about just tech in general, I went off, I did a web design course, and that gave me the confidence to create the Black Girl Finance website and kind of go from there. So yeah, totally non-related, but I feel like having the experience in a sales role and going out there and speaking to people and speaking to customers and telling a story, I feel like it really helped when I decided to launch Black Girl Finance. So I started with the website and started with the Instagram account, and it's just picked up from there. Plus, I feel like it really resonated with people straight away. Again, the inclusivity piece, they really were drawn to it. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing because I mean, like you say, it's often. I mean, people will say, right, a sample size of one. Like, don't build a product for a sample size of one. But actually, when you're finding that there's nothing in the market that solves your particular needs, and actually you're like, look, this helps me, and people like me will be benefiting from that. I think there's something that there's something that is driven out of the tone of content that's created in that way that comes much from a completely different point of authenticity. This is not a big corporate blog where you're like, I must talk in this tone of voice and blah 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 blah. You're speaking from your perspective on things that have helped you and will help other people, and because of that, I think you get a different level of cut through, don't you? Which is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I do is I speak to kind of women all the time, and one of the questions I ask them is, have you had a conversation with perhaps a financial advisor or someone in financial services about money before? And a lot of the times they say no, unfortunately. And I know that that's true because when I was writing the book, I was looking into the gaps that do exist, and there is an advice gap that exists. So a lot of the people that I speak to, and that could be someone who is really young and just starting out in their career, perhaps they've just finished university and earning an income for the first time, and it could be someone who's older, so who's perhaps maybe someone that's a baby boomer, maybe that managed to get on the property ladder and managed to earn some wealth, but they haven't felt comfortable enough to have a conversation with the financial institutions that are out there and available. So definitely, I feel like it fills a gap, basically. The work that I do, it does fill a gap.
Well, as you say, I mean, the word confidence, I think, is a big part in that, isn't it? Because it's such an intimidating experience. It's such an important one. I mean, this is your money, you know, like this is how you set up, you know, your life and your families or whatever. But actually the process of doing it is very intimidating. And actually, I mean, I guess traditional financial services makes that quite intimidating, doesn't it? Because it's like a bloke behind a desk that's huge and you're on the other, you know, it feels a bit like school, doesn't it? So you go and see the headmaster. So like anything you can do to arm people to feel better capable of having those conversations and knowing what all the different acronyms that they're going to kind of throw at you are, it sort of empowers people to take control, doesn't it?
It really, really does. And what you say is really true. I remember feeling quite intimidated, thinking about, you know, speaking to a mortgage broker. The first time I got on the property ladder, I did it with my sister. The second time, it was by myself. At that stage, I was single, but I wanted to get on the property ladder. And I do remember feeling really intimidated, thinking I'm going to have this conversation with this person, you know, and just that there's a lot of fear around finances. So yeah, I literally am that bridge. You know, I encourage people to get help and support if they need to, if they're ready to speak to a financial advisor. You know, I do feel like I'm a bit of that bridge, basically, saying, go on, it's okay, it'll be okay.
Well, it's fine. That's a great thing. It's like I say, giving people confidence and giving people the momentum to go and have these conversations is an amazing thing. You touched on it a little bit ago, but you know, this sort of movement that you're trying to kind of create with this content has taken you into, you know, like say non-traditional and traditional channels. You know, the podcast is fantastic, but you've written a book as well. Like that's talking about, it's like, you know, the award's definitely making your family proud, but like having written a book, that's super impressive as well. So how did that come about, and what's sort of been the impact? Because I guess with all of these different media streams, you can tap into all different types of audiences, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a plan as well. It's about providing the information in a way that is, you know, accessible and desirable by the end user. So, it's been quite deliberate in that respect. In terms of the book, how it came about, I really had it written down when I created the platform that I really wanted to write a book. So I had Black Girl Finance book written down because, like I said, I was such a consumer of personal finance books, and I was aware that there was none written from, you know, a perspective such as mine, or, you know, that takes into consideration my culture. So I really had it written down. I'd started the process really slowly by creating some ebooks about different topics. So the first ebook I created was around building an emergency fund. And that was specifically because I had done my first event, and one of the themes that came out from not just, you know, one or two women, but quite a few of them, was the fact that an financial emergency had happened. Perhaps they needed to travel abroad, or perhaps, you know, the car broke down and they had no money put aside to handle that, just, you know, simple financial emergency that happened. So I thought, okay, what can I create that will be useful? So I thought, okay, I'll create an ebook about an emergency fund. So I did that one, and then the second one was about, it might have been about budgeting, just to, you know, get people budgeting as well. And it was picked up by an editor. I put it onto my website. It was picked up by an editor from Quercus Books, and they reached out to me and said, you know, hey, would you want to write a book? And for a minute, I was like, this is quite scary, but I said yes, because I knew it was something that I wanted. So I said yes. And yeah, I was fortunate to have the opportunity to write the book last year, and it came out in January this year. So really, it's 6 months old. So yeah, really, really proud of that book. And in terms of the impact, again, I think it's that visibility. And I was very fortunate as well that I'd been doing some financial coaching from prior to writing the book, and some of the coachees that I'd worked with, they were really lovely and allowed me to share their experiences of you know, whatever issues. The book's broken down into different financial topics, so like budgeting and paying off debt and investing and you know, creating assets. And I've been able to not just talk about myself, because that would be, you know, a bit much. So I've been able to share their stories in the book as well, and how they've overcome certain kind of challenges and issues as well. So yeah, it's been really great. And the impact is that it's just so much more relatable to people who don't usually get kind of featured in kind of personal finance literature. So it's really, really relatable to a lot of people, but it is specifically a personal finance book as well. So anybody can read it and anybody can get something out of it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. How did you find the process of writing a book? I'll come back to the impact point in a minute because I've got a load of questions on that, because I think that's fascinating. But on the process, I mean, how did you find sort of extracting that? Because I personally, hence why we're doing this over video and it not being a written thing. I'm a talker, so like actually like videos and or podcasts and stuff, I'm all good with. But writing and getting it, I find it so much more difficult. But are you sort of an all rounder? Have you got kind of all of the different channels now?
Oh no, I just thought when you said that you're like a video person, and I just thought I need to get some tips from you, because I'm complete opposite. So writing the book and just hearing my voice on the podcast rather than having to get glammed up for a video, that's my comfort zone, basically.
I mean, we've got a very different hairstyle. It makes it much easier for me to get ready for the camera, I guess. But yeah, it's all of these things is always momentum, isn't it, as you say?
Yeah, it absolutely is. But yeah, so writing the book was, I had to really, focus and make time. And I read something that said that often when it comes to writing, if you're a woman and you're kind of taking care of the childcare and taking care of the family and all of that, you really have to be really strict and carve out some time to write. So that's essentially what I did. And my family were very supportive as well. So I'd get a phone call from, my mum, and she'd be like, "Oh, well, you're writing now." She'd say hello, and then she'd be like, "Are you writing still?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm writing." And then she'd put the phone down on me. So, they were really, really supportive. So they gave me the time and the space to write. And also at the time, I should say, I was still working for the kind of software technology company. So when I got the book deal, I had to have a conversation with them and kind of explain to them what I'd been doing and what I'd been up to for the past year and a half, however long it'd been. And they were really, really supportive as well, bless them. They were so thrilled for me and so supportive, and were like, "Okay, whatever time you need to write, take it." So I was really lucky that the support system, personal and work, were fantastic. So I was able to carve out some time to
fantastic.
write it.
Well, I'll have to get some tips off you on that one then, and when we get around to that. But that's fascinating as well. You talk about the impact. Like, actually, it's interesting, isn't it? When you you write a blog, you write a book, you do a podcast, you kind of put these things out. You don't always sort of feel necessarily directly the impact that you have on an individual, or at the end of it. And I know, obviously, with the people that you've coached, you've sort of seen firsthand the sort of journey that they've gone on in terms of you're very much like a financial personal trainer in that sense. You're sort of you're making them do the work so they understand the processes, and the impact of that can be life altering, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the work that I do. I feel like if I had a finance coach back then, I'd be so much further along in terms of just financial stability and wealth creation. And I guess it's just getting people to think about how the different aspects of personal finance knit together. So why should you have a pension? Why should you do that as early as possible? And why should you get life insurance? And why should you be thinking about inheritance tax? And I think these are conversations that can be non-existent in some households. So even just encouraging people to think about it and perhaps do something about it is quite new, I guess.
Well, it's to your point as well, the knock-on effect is not just necessarily on the individual, but actually much broader than that when it comes to generation, doesn't it? I mean, I guess talking a little bit about the sort of broader picture on this in terms of financial literacy, but inclusion much more broadly within financial services. I mean, as you say, people to look up to that look like you is really difficult from a societal perspective when nobody's looking like you. So actually, how much do you think that that sort of representation is a sort of a key part of the next phase of inclusion. Because I mean, actually, when people talk about inclusion in financial services, they mean we're going to go to India or we're going to go to Africa and we'll put a current account in everybody's hands. But there's so many things on closer to home that actually require us to really focus on, well, again, just having a current account is not being included. Really understanding how different backgrounds, different generation backgrounds, all of this has such a big impact on your abilities, but also the capabilities that are offered to you in the first place, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think there's so many different strands to this conversation. There is that, looks like me. So I've got the potential to have that kind of financial career. There is that looks like me. So I feel comfortable and confident speaking to you. There is the, I guess, kind of more complex around trying to increase financial, I guess, capabilities and financial outcomes for people as well. So the piece around, when I was writing the book, I was looking at all of the gaps that exist. So, just there's the gender pay gap, which we talk about, and we want to, I know that there are financial organizations that are, improving their gender pay gap by putting people in more senior positions, and that's needed there. And equally, the same approach is needed when it comes to kind of ethnicity pay gaps that do exist as well. So again, if I can name a company, I know that Lloyd's is working hard and doing lots of things like that, which is great. The other part of it is how do you deal with someone who's not your traditional customer? And I know that on the previous spotlight with the Hilda Project and Bank Like a Woman, they spoke about the fact that, if I'm a kind of woman who is, has spent some time outside of work, so there's been a break in my kind of pensions contributions, perhaps I'm taking time off to look at family, how does that impact when I go to get a mortgage? I think she was very specific, talking about the mortgage process and having to take her name off, and I think about this when it comes to the fact that women in general, we do pay a premium because we're less likely to have financial products in our name. We might have financial products in a partner's name, and again, we pay a penalty for that. So if I'm a customer and I'm coming to your, financial service, not presenting them in the traditional way, I don't want to be penalised for it. I want you to have a system in place that can, give me your product and allow me to create the financial life that I want, without being penalised for it. So a company that I feel like does that very well, there's an insurance company called Marshmallow, and they are an insurance company for, people who have migrated to the UK and don't have that traditional kind of history, that credit history. So I feel like we really need these products and services in place to tackle the change in customer base, the change in landscape of the customers that you serve. So I guess my point is, creating a platform called Black Girl Finance was just a realization that there are gaps that exist for specific groups, and highlighting those gaps so that someone can create products to solve them, basically.
I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because you've lived this, but actually when you sort of look at the thing that's maybe driving this to a certain degree is like, people have got choice now. Like nobody wants to turn up to a meeting that makes you feel uncomfortable or not understood.
Absolutely.
And now actually you've got choice of like who you actually go with. I mean, it's one of the great things that we've seen with the real explosion of the competition mandate with the UK and the FCA and da. I think I've banged on about that roughly like 100 episodes on Fintech Insider at this stage. But with that competition mandate has given everybody an option to get much better experiences, and that's amazing, isn't it? Because actually, if you're like, you just don't understand me, you've got the ability to go to 15 other banks and actually find people who do. I mean, we've seen, I guess, just this week the current account switching numbers. I mean, I think it was Starling have just got 18,000 people switched to them in the last quarter. To put it into context, the HSBC had 20,000. One bank has been around for nearly 300 years. One bank has been around for nearly 7. So the momentum in brands that go out of their way to really understand their customer base and solve those problems. I mean, I guess people are voting with their, literally with their money, right? In terms of where people are moving to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was thinking about this recently, just the fact that you can now, use your banking, for a good cause, use it, bank for reasons that are close to your heart, and I think it's fantastic because you want to feel like you're welcome, and it needs to be easy as well. The kind of fintech and the rise of being able to do so many things from your mobile phone. It's the same for banking. I recall maybe last year I remortgaged, and like the conveyancing website that I had to use to kind of communicate with the solicitor, it seemed so old and dated, and it was really painful looking at it. I really wanted to message them and say, come on, what's going on with this? It's 2020. Because I'm just so used to that, doing things on my phone, and not having all of the stress of it being really old school and not modern.
Yeah.
So
it's fascinating, isn't it? When we've touched on, I guess we've both said the word education quite a few times through this. I mean, how much do you think this sort of goes back to actually, are we doing enough from a societal perspective to educate people early enough? I mean, I learned all sorts of stuff about like different religions on different parts of the planet that I'm not sure I retain any of that, but like some basic personal cash flow financing might have been really, really useful to me. Probably less so about the Romans, maybe more about like what APR is. Like that would have been helpful,
Absolutely, yeah. Again, reference in the book, I was doing research around kind of money cognizance, and it starts at such an early age, definitely way before 18 when you go off to university. So yes, absolutely. I feel like it definitely needs to be something that is taught in schools as a priority. So I think we definitely need the education piece. And I feel like obviously there's lots of news about like cryptocurrency in the news at the moment, and lots of warnings from the FCA that people can lose all of their money. And I just feel like young people are the ones that really navigate towards the new technology, anything that's new and interesting and different and probably anti-establishment. They are the ones. So we need the financial education piece to keep up with that. So I feel like it's really, really important. And luckily there are some brands that are out there, some fintechs that are trying to kind of embed that financial education knowledge into these new digital apps that they're building, which is great. But yeah, I feel like it needs to keep pace so that we can have less FCA warnings about things.
Well, you touched on it a little bit earlier on that inclusion and diversity has so many different threads to this, doesn't it? Actually, it's to your point. I don't think it's if we put all of our efforts into solving one problem, there's actually like hundreds. And actually, I think as you solve those pieces around education, or you solve those pieces around gender pay gaps or ethnicity pay gaps, as you've described, then this is a process and a period of change, which is really difficult, isn't it? Because it's hard to sort of almost put your finger on the one thing that we can all triple down on and agree that it's ridiculous and let's solve it. So how do we? I mean, the difficulty in that question is like, how do we approach this, and how do organizations approach this? Because when it comes to inclusivity from a financial perspective and inclusivity from a financial literacy perspective, how do organizations even start?
Oh, good. Such a good question. I'd say organizations can start by, if it's the piece around like having that representation so people feel comfortable to approach you, I would say start by kind of measuring the numbers, seeing how many people you have who are from a Black, Asian, minority, ethnic background, and set a target. I think Lloyd's has done that. Another organisation that I kind of wrote about, so that's why they're in my mind. I think it was it's an EasyJet, like the EasyJet CEO, I think, don't quote me because I might be wrong, but he took a slight pay cut because to bring his pay in line with the female CEO who had just left, who he replaced. And that's just because you're aware of the gaps that exist. So, and they're trying to increase the number of pilots. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be really, really difficult. It can just be really simple solutions. It can be thinking about pipeline. So where are you going for your candidates, and just making sure you're including some qualified people? Because I think sometimes when we have these conversations, it's kind of like it's dismissed as just what's the word? Like positive discrimination, or but it's not that. We can't make the assumption that people who are female or from a different background aren't as qualified, because we're totally caught up when it comes to the education piece. So that's not really it. So yeah, just making sure you're looking for diverse talent, and there are loads of organizations that provide diverse talent. One such organization, the Black Young Professionals Network, they're out there, they exist. So your pipeline, your talent pipeline, the career progression piece when people are in those roles as well. So that's on that side of things. On the kind of customer side of things, I guess it's just understanding that your customer may not be presenting as that model, one size fits all customer, and what products and services can you build and create that will take that into consideration. So if we talk about the piece of maybe someone having a kind of limited credit history, what other things about them can you use to score and make sure that they're given a fairly a fair product. So I just think it's about thinking outside the box. I know that the Hilda project touched upon the fact that the banking system was designed at a time where women weren't necessarily included or allowed to be part of it. So I guess it's doing a similar thing, making it a bit more inclusive to the variety that we now have.
Yeah, it's so difficult, isn't it? And actually, I mean, there's such there is and there should be such sort of pressure to advance the system so quickly. But as you say, it's sort of an intertwined ball of knots, isn't it, in terms of solving these problems. But I think it's fascinating, as you say, though, that actually people feeling and seeing people who represent them, as much as I think the argument is always sort of pushed back on that, as exactly as you say, is like, positive discrimination people get very uncomfortable with, because of the idea of like, well, nobody wants to be the, I'm not here because I'm a woman. I'm here because I'm bloody good at what I do, and actually I've earned this opportunity rather than being given this opportunity. But I think we're at a point in the industry where there's such an imbalance of opportunities that have been given over such a long, many generations of change, that it requires. It's exactly like the banks are in trouble themselves. They've been so slow to keep up. Yeah. So actually the changes they need to make are now revolutions rather than evolutions. And actually we're in a very similar place when it comes to equality of many types. This is not something we can wait for another, banks have been around for 300 years. If we wait for another 300 years to deal with it, it's probably going to very much have missed the boat when it comes to the type of change that we really need to see, right? So it's hard. But all right, I'm sad to say that we're coming to the end of the conversation. I know we'll definitely kind of talk a lot more, and definitely I'll be picking up the phone to get some more tips on writing for sure. One of the things we always like to try and ask people is, what advice would you give your younger self? Because actually it's fascinating as you grow and you get experience and all these things, the weird and wonderful things that you did when you were just getting going. So what's the advice you'd give to your younger self?
I would say that you can be the first with that part around seeing someone that looks like you. I think that is very, very powerful, but also instilling a confidence in my, if I could instill that confidence in my younger self to say that you can be the first, you don't necessarily have to wait to see that person in front of you, that role model. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that I do certainly reflect upon. That's a bit of advice I'd give myself.
Amazing. I mean, somebody's always got to be the pioneer, right? Somebody's always got to be the first person to make that step, and it's inevitably always a lot harder for that first person. But it's been fantastic to see the impact that you've had and the momentum that you've sort of created with everything you do. Congratulations again with the award. It was very well deserved, and yeah, you'll have to be coming back next year for getting it 2 years in a row. Hey.
We shall see.
Thank
you.
Everybody, we're running out of time, I'm afraid, so we're going to have to leave you there. Selina, thank you very much for joining us. Where can people learn a little bit more about you, the book, the blog? Where do people find out more information? It's
all on the website, so it's www.blackgirlfinance.co.uk, or find us on Instagram at blackgirlfinanceuk. So.
Very, very good. That's all we have time for this week. Make sure you follow 11FS pretty much everywhere at this stage. I mean, LinkedIn, YouTube, whatever you want to do. Particularly on the YouTube channel, if you subscribe over there, you'll make sure that you catch every episode of this and all of the other previous episodes that we've done as well. That's all we've got for you this week, though. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a great week. See you soon. Goodbye.